In France, people are in the streets for some time. It started in January and it's still going strong. They are protesting against the change in pension age. Protests against the governments are not only happening in France, but it's happening across the continents. Welcome to the Money Trail. As the world is moving through an economic slowdown bordering recession, governments all over the world are testing people's patience with their austerity measures. Cut down the public expenditure, cut down social welfare measures, cut down the fiscal deficit. These seem to be the universal mantra, and India is not an exception.
The world has recognized the Indian economy as a bright star.
But in the middle of all these austerity measures, a few Indian states are going the opposite way. They have brought back the old pension scheme, which is alleged to be a huge financial burden for the governments. India had moved to the new pension scheme few decades back. Then why this reversal now? What are the old and new pension schemes mean? Let me explain. Under the old pension scheme, retired employees receive half of their last drawn salary as the monthly pension. And additionally, the pensioner will also get the increase in dearness allowance when the government declares it for the existing employees. Dearness allowance, or you may be better know it as DA, is a percentage of the basic salary given to mitigate the impact of inflation. So the pension increases every year, mostly, and the entire money comes from the employer, which is the government. The employee doesn't have to pay anything. However, in the new pension scheme, it's contributory. Employee contribute 10% of their salary every month, while the government contributes 14%. Of course, during the period of employment. This money is invested constantly into the market, means into various type of funds and bonds. On retirement, the money accrued is paid back. You can withdraw it in total or in installments. That's monthly installments like the old pension scheme. So tell me, which is the best one, the old or the new? Of course, the old pension scheme for multiple reasons. Number one, whatever your period of service is, you are assured at least half of the last drawn salary. Meanwhile, in the new scheme, the pension depends upon the amount of money you deposited, which depends on your period of service. That is, a person who has worked for 10 years is likely to get more money than a person who has worked only 5 years, because the money they deposit in the market changes. Another thing, the pension amount is always guaranteed by the government in the old scheme. While in the new one, it depends upon the ups and downs of the market. Managed by the fund managers, the chances of suffering huge losses for the employees hangs like a sword. The government has left them to the vulnerabilities of the market. If your investments earn profit, well and good. But don't come running if you lose everything. This has happened in some countries already. Trade unions point out that this is not a mere speculation in India too. It's real, and mind you, it's happening. Federation of Union Government Employees Union point out an example. This example is taken from a letter they had written to the government. A government employee who retired after more than 13 years of service had a basic pay of 30,500. So according to the old pension scheme, he would have received half of it, 15,250 per month. But do you know what he got? It was just 2,417 because the markets were down. How will a pensioner survive with such an amount? So the next question logically is, then why did the country opt for the new scheme? Obviously, because it's less of a financial burden to the government, isn't it? The Union government implemented it in 2004 when Vajpayee was the Prime Minister. It was implemented for all officers except for the armed forces. It was voluntary for the state governments whether to opt or not. In the beginning, they were unwilling, but eventually, almost all the states joined the scheme. Exception was West Bengal. But now, many states are walking back.
अभी मैंने देखा था 2 महीने पहले सरकारी कर्मचारी सड़क पे आ गए। उन सबको मैं कहना चाहता हूँ, वो ओल्ड पेंशन स्कीम चाहते हैं, उनको ओल्ड पेंशन स्कीम 31 जनवरी तक उनकी ओल्ड पेंशन स्कीम लागू कर दी जाएगी।
They are Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh, Punjab, and now Himachal Pradesh. And so the pressure from the government employees is building up all over the country to follow these states. But so far, the BJP-led union government and many of the other states hasn't budged. The BJP alleges that it's a cheap trick to woo voters at the expense of country's financial stability. Is it true? Let's find out. In the last 30 years, the total pension bill of the states has jumped from 3,131 crore to 3,86,000 crore, and it will again grow if the all pension scheme is re-adopted. The country doesn't have that much revenue to fund it. These are all the government's arguments. But rather than remaining shocked at the pension bill, let's look at the other factor. Why is the revenue not growing as much as the pension bill? Why is that? Because the government chose so. In 2019-20, for example, the effective tax rate on profit-making companies was just 22.5%. This is for the companies who make profit just about 10 crore, and it was surveyed and found out by the tax authorities. Remember, for individual persons, if he makes even half of this amount, the tax will be huge. Why? Remember the huge tax cuts gifted to the corporations by the government in the last 4-5 years. Tax rates were heavily slashed. The government advocates that this is all to bring more revenue as business grows. But then why is the tax revenue not growing as expected? Why did the pension bill become unaffordable? Because the neoliberal theory and practice which the government implemented failed to deliver. The tax didn't grow as much as expected. Hence, the union government wants to curtail other expenses, one being the pension. There are others too, like spending in health, education, social welfare schemes like the Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. Remember last budget when the figures for these were heavily slashed. Now, this is the case for the union government. What about the states? That's a different story. State revenues have been skewed by the central government by cutting down revenues from taxes that have to be shared with the states. For example, fuel tax. Now they raise money through cesses and surcharges that are not part of the divisible pool. Just check how the tax system of the fuel works. As has been pointed by the Finance Minister of Tamil Nadu, the share of cesses and surcharges in the central government's revenue has risen from 10.4% of the gross tax revenue to 26.7% in the last 10 years, almost 17% hike. And now GST has made things even worse. You know the story. In addition, there are stringent limits set on deficit spending for the states. Only for the states, because union government can unilaterally raise the fiscal deficit limit. They can do according to their will. New pension scheme, so it's an easy way out, a win-win situation for all. The state governments can also find a way to cut down their expenditure, since their income is not growing. But this win-win situation is not for the employees, only for the governments. But still, the union government has an upper hand in the perception war. Whenever the pension debate comes up, the image flash is that of a high-profile government babu in the offices, the rich guy, the influential guy. But there are thousands and thousands of government employees who don't even come under the purview of income tax. It's their fate that's been sealed with an offering of few thousand rupees as monthly pension. Will the government give them back the old pension scheme? I mean, not for the high-fi officials, but the poor people who also work in the government offices. But if you argue that government servants are just a small group and there are a huge majority outside, let me put it in a different way. Will the government think of a decent pension for all the citizens above the age of 60? Let's say a monthly pension of 5,000 rupees. I don't think so. 2 weeks back, the government was pulled up by the Supreme Court of India for not paying the retired military personnel under the one rank, one pension scheme. Remember the whole demand, the struggle, the strike, and at last government accepting it. But they haven't paid it yet. The government tried the usual seal cover explanation, but the court disallowed it. And government had to admit in the open court that they doesn't have enough funds to pay it now. So they don't have money. All because the neoliberal schemes that have drained the government coffers while the rich are reaping all the benefits. It's time to admit it and make a course correction before it's too late. And this is not a first in the whole world. Many nations have universal pension schemes and other such welfare schemes. In fact, the reason for protest in France can be unconvincing for us, unbelievable, because we have only seen demands and protests to increase the pension age in France, but the people are in the streets against the government's decision to raise the retirement age. And why people are protesting? Because that's good is the post-retirement benefits. This is not only in France, there are many countries which are doing the same thing. So why can't India do it? If boasting about the soon to become the $5 trillion economy, the world superpower is not enough, there is another option. Tax the super rich. Tax the top 1%, and we will get the money to do it and many more. The total net worth of private individuals, according to some calculation, is 650 lakh crore in total for the entire country. And it's 58% or 377 lakh crore is in the hands of just 1% of the population. The rich 1% has the majority of the wealth of the country. A 2% wealth tax means 7.54 lakh crore every year. Why not tax them rather than taking away the pension of the hapless government servants? Hope you got the point, and hope you understand what exactly this all pension scheme, no pension scheme debate is. The real issue is somewhere else. With this, we conclude. Goodbye till we meet again.